I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Podango. Too many podcasts, not enough time? Let the station directors at Podango sift through the mountains of podcasts to bring you the very best. Check out poddango.com. This is Dusty Wright with the Culture Catch. Today we are very honored to have one of rock and roll's finest photographers, Mr. Bob Gruen. Bob, welcome to the Culture Catch.
I'm very glad to be here.
Bob, you've really captured some of rock and roll's elite. Tell us how you got your start and why a guy would even gravitate towards photography and not some other form of the art world, or maybe you did as a young man.
Oh, well, when I was a kid, I always wished I could draw, actually, but I was better at taking pictures. My mom had a hobby of photography, and she used to develop and print her own pictures. And when I was very little, say 3 years old, I was too big to leave running around the house and too little to stay put, so she took me in the darkroom with her. And so I learned how to develop and print pictures in the dark before they were even developing tanks. And I think when I was 8 years old, I got my first camera for a birthday present, and there was no looking back. I just started taking pictures and kind of became the family photographer. In high school, my friends were mostly the artists and musicians, and rock bands actually are similar to families. I think I did football and baseball teams before that in high school. And then got out of high school, I just started living with musicians in the city, and one thing led to another. I met Ike and Tina Turner and took some really good pictures for them, and they introduced me to a lot of other people. And 1972, I met John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I did get pretty comfortable with John and Yoko, and the first few months especially, they were recording the Sometime in New York City album, and then they started working on an Elephant's Memory album. And so they were singing like new songs, and sometimes they would jam doing a lot of old, they were both into Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley kind of songs, and they would sing them. But then they scheduled a concert at Madison Square Garden, and I remember the first night I walked into rehearsal, and they played a couple of Elvis and Bo songs, and everything was cool. And then all of a sudden he went into, I think, Imagine or Cold Turkey, and one of the Beatles songs. And I was like, oh my God, it's not just John, our new friend, that's the fucking Beatle. That's John Lennon, This is a series I put together of 9 different shots done that day. This is the most well-known one. This one's actually pretty popular as well. But I like to put it together like this to show a bit more of what was going on, a bit more of John's personality and how he was posing in different ways till it finally came together into one really comfortable, pretty good shot. And it's become a favorite picture for quite a few people. Not always quite sure why, because at the time when we did it, we weren't thinking about world domination or anything. We were just taking a nice picture on a late August afternoon. But I think partly that he's so confident that it says New York City, that he's got that kind of New York attitude. There is a New York feeling, of confidence and the ability that you can do just about anything you want. And he loved being in New York. He loved the freedom that you feel in New York. They liked the pictures that I had taken. I did some pictures for an article. And
what magazine was that?
Actually, it was for After Dark magazine. A guy was actually doing an interview about the Elephant's Memory Band, a story about the Elephant's Memory Band, and asked me to come with him when he was doing the interview with John and Yoko, who at that point were using the Elephants as a backup band, and went on to produce an album for the Elephants. And they were recording the Sometime in New York City album at the record plant, and I went along with them to get a picture of them with the band together. And later it turned out I was the only one who had a picture of them together, and they wanted to use it for the album cover, and they saw the other pictures I did and invited me to come back more often and keep taking pictures of them, which I did. And actually it was a funny thing, because through that, the Elephants Memories manager was Lieber and Krebs, and going up to drop off some pictures of the Elephants at the management office, they told me to go see this other band we managed, the New York Dolls. And so I went down there, and I
had no idea that Lieber and Krebs had.
Yeah. Oh, they had the Elephants,
and they had my
Aerosmith as well.
And they had my friend Pepe's band, Blues
the
Magoos.
I did an album cover for the Blues Magoos too.
Oh, you did? Did you do the Kaleidoscope? Was it called Kaleidoscope?
One of the ones in New York, a double album.
Yeah,
with all the pictures inside.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So this tribe afforded you these other meetings of rock and roll
because then
elite.
I met the New York Dolls. I started working with them, started hanging out at Max's and then CBGB's and meeting all of those bands. Met Malcolm McLaren when he came over and was working with the Dolls towards the end of their time. Malcolm really liked the way the Dolls were confronting society and getting so much attention by being somewhat different, and in their case by wearing makeup and putting on some kind of feminine airs. People were really frightened by the whole idea of people being gay or any kind of homosexuality. The Dolls, for the record, were not at all homosexual, and actually were the most macho guys I knew.
Right.
But they were playing on this whole gender bender idea. They asked David Bowie if he was bisexual, and he said that he was. And so they asked David Johansen, "Are you bisexual?" He said, "No, I'm trisexual. I'll try anything." They pushed it even further beyond the boundaries. And Malcolm really liked that confrontational feeling. And in fact, when the Dolls broke up, Malcolm was. They give him some credit for managing the New York Dolls, but actually he came over with a load of clothes that he was selling to the New York Dolls. I mean, not selling, but giving to the Dolls, and expected the Dolls to get on stage and wear them. But by the time he showed up with the clothes, there were all these red outfits made of different materials. And the band had broken up. And along the way, they hatched this idea that Malcolm would form a band in England for Syl, and Sylvain would be the leader of the new band, and similar to the Dolls, and kind of continue that idea in England. And in fact, when Malcolm went back a month later, he brought Syl's guitar and amp and piano keyboards, I think, with him to England. Then when I went to England, Malcolm actually was the only one I knew. I called him up. He took me down to this club, and I met the Sex Pistols and the Clash and Susie and the Banshees, and all in this one club called Louise.
This little domino got knocked over in New York.
Yeah, I've just been going ever since. It's really one thing leads to another, and I just meet people, and they like my pictures, and I take some more. And,
well, you're being modest. I mean, you have to have an eye, and you have to be able to capture the moment.
I've worked very, very hard. And I've captured a lot of moments, and it is all about the right moment. I have a passion for rock and roll, and I really enjoy it, and I feel it, and I take the picture when the moment is right. And I try to show more than just the facts of somebody standing there. I get a little more of the passion and the feeling involved.
That's Ramon's shot.
I like this one now because it really shows what world they were living in. This is actually pre-graffiti Subway. And you kind of see how the other people on the train are dressed, and how the Ramones stood out, not just among punks, but there were no punks. This was the world around them. This is where they were walking and talking and looking like this.
You could spend $200 for those jeans today, right? But
they didn't have $2 back then. That's why they couldn't buy a new pair. Back then, these pants probably cost like $7 to begin with.
Right. I think you make a good point, Bob, because this is not a stage photo. This is you just capturing a slice of life.
Yeah. I don't work with stylists. We don't plan things. I go and see what people are up to and just take some good pictures of it.
What are some of your fondest memories of maybe the acts that got away that didn't get to, do you have like a...
The only person I really wished I had met that I didn't take a photograph of was Otis Redding. I missed him. I would have loved to have seen him. I met Jimi Hendrix one time, but didn't get to take any pictures. I always wished I could see him again.
Huh.
I actually did take some pictures when I was first starting out, but I had a very cheap little camera, and I didn't know how to use it yet. I saw Jimi Hendrix play at the Hunter College here in the 60s.
Well, you've done pretty well for yourself. How about bands like unknown bands that you thought, man,
all my favorite bands are unknown.
Yeah? That's good.
I mean, the Miamis wrote like 78 #1 hit singles that never got recorded.
The Miamis.
The Miamis. There was a band, one of the early CBGB's band was a band called Steel Tips. There's loads of unsigned bands.
Right.
In fact, there was one friend of mine in a band, Degeneration, who got nervous one day because I liked the band so much.
Jesse?
Well, it wasn't, Jesse was in the band, but Danny from the band, one day he said, like, I'm afraid that you like us so much. Does that mean that we're not going to make it?
Oh.
But some of the bands I like made it. The Clash certainly made it.
Yeah. When I walked into the show the other night, this shot was just like, for me, this like, I want this one for my house. I love this shot.
Well, it really captures that passion of the Clash. I traveled with them quite a bit. I saw a lot of Clash shows. I took a lot of Clash pictures. This one's my favorite. It just captures everybody doing what they do with the power and the glory that was the Clash. And a lot of people think that the Clash is the only band that really mattered.
Well, you talk about punk rock and lasting impact. Their music is timeless.
Well, and it reaches a lot of people because it's not just about anger. It's about, being unhappy with the situation that is, but wanting to do something better.
Social consciousness.
The whole point is when Joe Strummer yells out, well, what are you going to do now? It's not just like this is bad and that's bad, but like, let's get together and fix it.
Right.
And there's no easy solutions, but at least they put that drive in there so that people have a hope for the future, have a hope for their lives.
Right.